In this video, I'm going to cover some of the most common symptoms that you experience with inflammatory bowel disease, such as why you get blood in the stool, why you get diarrhea first thing in the morning, and also why you suffer with overwhelming fatigue. So the first point I'm going to kick off this video with today, guys, is probably one of the most notable symptoms that so many people out there with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis experience, and that is why you get blood in your stool. Now, this is purely a protective measure taken by the body, believe it or not. It's not actually the disease of Crohn's or colitis that causes this to happen. This is a protective mechanism that the body deploys in order to try to create a protective layer on the lining of the colon or small intestine. So what ends up happening is when we're in the situation of either chronic stress or acute trauma, what happens is the body goes into something called a Th2 inflammatory response. This is a rapid action taken by the body in order to protect it in a certain situation. We can see this when we suddenly get a bruise on our arm after we've damaged it, or we might cut our arm and suddenly it scabs over so quickly. The same thing is happening on the inside of our body, in our digestive tract, with all this inflaming and ulceration along the lining of the colon. So what happens is, in the case with blood in our stool, all that's really going on is it's irritation of this inflammation process. So what it is, it's a protective mechanism along the course of our digestive tract, and what we are doing is irritating it, most probably with the foods we're eating, but also when we get stressed, it changes this overall complexion of the insides of our intestines, the bacterial composition. But most noticeably, it's going to be some sort of irritating food that makes it all the way down to the last part of our colon, some indigestible foods, some of these resistant starches, complex carbohydrates, nuts, seeds, foods like that are going to pass the whole way through our digestive system and irritate that inflamed area, that area that's scabbed over. As you can see with the picture that's above me at the moment, it's all this ulceration that ends up becoming irritated, it bleeds, and that's where you get the blood from that appears in your stool. So now moving on to the question that is actually the title of this video, which is why you experience diarrhea first thing in the morning. So most of you out there that actually have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, you'll have a microbiome that is completely out of whack. This is the gut bacteria that creates kind of our gut integrity. It creates the lining that is actually the immune system that is located in our digestive tract. And now, either through a previous exposure of antibiotics or long-term use of steroids or other immune suppressant drugs, you've completely ruined what is actually designed to help break down our food and help to bulk our stool. And without these bacteria, what's going to happen is it's going to lead to a chronic kind of situation where you're just experiencing diarrhea and your stool isn't being able to be formed properly. Also, diarrhea is another thing the body creates as sort of a detox reaction. So as soon as something is going on in the body that it doesn't like and it wants to eliminate it as quickly as possible, it ends up causing diarrhea. And now onto the question, why do a lot of people out there experience diarrhea first thing in the morning? And that is because a lot of people make the mistake where they eat so soon before going to bed at night. They eat so late in the evening. And what happens is that eating and digestion are catabolic processes. They're actually involved in the breakdown of tissues and cells in the body, whereas sleeping is an anabolic process that tries to rebuild the body. So what we need to be doing is actually letting our bodies, leaving it alone, not eating anything late at night, and letting it rest, digest and relax over the evening time when we're sleeping. But what's happening is we're eating these foods, and while we're eating them, we're going to go to sleep shortly after. Our body's not creating all these digestive enzymes, digestive juices. It's leading to these half-digested foods, and they're making their way further down the intestine, further down the digestive tract than they should do before they're broken down. And it ends up fermenting this dysbiotic bacteria further along in our digestive tract, which leads to all this fermentation, diarrhea, horrible smelling stool, and all of that is sat there just before we wake up in the morning. And not only is sleep the biggest anabolic process in the body, it's also the biggest parasympathetic nervous state that the body experiences in a day. This is where the body is in a rest, digest and repair mode. So actually what happens is food moves through the digestive system while we're sleeping, and it happens at a subconscious level. Obviously we're not aware of what's going on, But because this is happening over many hours in an evening, what happens is there's the build-up of all the stuff there when we wake up in the morning. So what happens is, like I said, all this food that's half digested, that's not broken down properly, that's fermented in the intestines, you know, it's this detox reaction with this diarrhea, it's all sat there. And so there is a build-up first thing when you wake up in the morning, and what you need to do more than anything is just rush off to the toilet and get rid of it, and things tend to improve further on down the line. And now on to the topic of achy joints, why you experience achy joints. Now it's all to do with a hormone in the body called cortisol. Now cortisol is an anti-inflammatory hormone that the body produces naturally, and it's in response to when there is stress or damage occurring, where the body feels the need to release this hormone in order to deal with the afflicted area. So as with the case with inflammatory bowel disease, digestion is hindered. The body needs to inflame the digestive system in order to heal it. So it releases all of this hormone, this cortisol, so much of it. But the problem is cortisol is a catabolic hormone, which means it needs to break down cells and tissues from the human body in order to carry out its amazing anti-inflammatory processes that it does. So what it does is it leaches away at parts of the body it deems least important to survival. So it goes for things like your joints, your bones. It eats away at these cells and tissues, and actually it uses those cells and tissue to perform its anti-inflammatory roles in the digestive tract. This is why those of you who have been on drugs like prednisolone for an extended period of time end up getting so many issues with your joints. It's because it's a synthetic version. The pill is a synthetic version of the hormone cortisol. And what cortisol ends up doing, like I said, is it leaches away at your joints and your bones and things like that. And so those of you who have been on prednisolone, that's why you experience so many joint issues. So now on to the topic of bloating and why you bloat later on in the day. Now this is a fascinating one because there's so many people out there I hear that say they bloat throughout a day, but they tend to wake up with a very flat stomach and they have no issues with bloating as soon as they wake up in the morning. This is all to do with, again, as we progress throughout a day gradually, the body slowly enters something called a sympathetic dominant state where blood drains away from the digestive system into your heart and into your peripheral muscles. The body's having to kind of repair itself. It goes in this fight or flight state, and this is a natural process, but it's exaggerated more in sufferers whose inflammation markers are elevated. So when this happens, like I said, digestion is temporarily shut down because blood rushes away from the digestive system. So you end up getting this bloated, kind of this huge stomach. Again, another thing that happens is the food that you consume throughout a day, whether it be breakfast, lunch, dinner, it all accumulates. And then again, you've got this big load of food going all the way down to your colon. And what's happening is, again, it's fermenting this dysbiotic bacteria. Like I said before earlier on in this video, if you've been exposed to all of these antibiotics, other anti-inflammatory medications, immune suppressant drugs, steroids, everything that is destroyed your bacterial microbial diversity in your intestines, is going to have issues breaking down your food, and they'll most likely end up fermenting and causing that distension of your stomach as you progress through a day. And the final point I just want to mention on why you experience bloating later on in the day is you may just be eating too much at a meal, at a single meal time, because the size of the human stomach is meant to be around the size of our fist, which is relatively small. If you imagine that you cram too much food into one meal, into that small space, the stomach may not have released the sufficient stomach acid to properly break down all those foods. And so some of it becomes half digested and passes through into areas of the digestive system that it's not supposed to in that whole food form. And what ends up happening, like I said before, is it ferments, it creates all these foreign undigested proteins that can lead onto all sorts of other issues. And again, that can be another reason as to why you experience bloating later on in the day. Now moving on to severe fatigue, and this is one of the ones I hear so many people complain about a lot of the time. And to be honest, I'm completely with you on this one, guys, because it took me so long to work out fatigue, why we experience it, and actually how to come back from it. And I've made an upcoming video all about the topic of fatigue, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But I'm just going to go over it very briefly in this video, and that is why we actually get so fatigued. Now, the number one reason is because when the body is inflamed, like I said before, these adrenal glands, they pump out a hormone called cortisol. It's a stress hormone. It's an anti-inflammatory hormone. But what's really interesting about when the adrenal glands are firing with this hormone, they actually suppress the thyroid gland, which is responsible for releasing thyroid stimulating hormone, which actually ends up giving us energy and speeding up the metabolism. So if you're thinking, the adrenal glands are always firing because inflammation is always high, that means the thyroid gland is always going to be suppressed and energy levels are always going to be at rock bottom. So until we actually address what the cause is causing inflammation levels to be high, and we bring this level down, then slowly thyroid hormone can actually be released and we can actually have more energy by doing that. So another thing that's really important to note is about something called mitochondria, which are the energy powerhouses of almost every single cell in our body. So actually, when we go through a huge traumatic stress event or chronic stress over so many years, for example, having inflammation levels that have been elevated for years on end, these mitochondria are going to be so fatigued at a cellular level. So we're going to be fatigued at a cellular level. So there's no way we're going to be able to overcome this fatigue unless we, like I said before, remove these stressors and feed this mitochondria with the right nutrients. Like I said, this is so important, guys, because these are almost the starting point to where you actually get your energy from. And a lot of these mitochondria, the nutrients they require, two of the main ones are the B vitamins and magnesium. So if you're consuming foods that are actually full of these things, so maybe for example the B vitamins, you might want to be looking at things like living foods. Make sure you don't cook all your foods, because if you eat dead and denatured foods, you're actually always going to feel dead and denatured in your kind of living habits and how you get about from day to day. So you're always going to feel fatigued if you just eat cooked foods. So another really important point to note about fatigue is about sleep deprivation, and actually how common it is amongst sufferers of inflammatory bowel disease. This is again what I was saying. If your inflammatory markers are high, cortisol levels are going to be high, this hormone released, this stress hormone. And when this is constantly being released and it's constantly elevated, it's going to disrupt your sleep. It's going to stop you from getting to sleep. But also what it's going to do is it's going to wake you up multiple times in the evening to stop you from having that long solid block kind of hours of sleeping that you really need to feel rejuvenated when you wake up first thing in the morning. So it's all about finding the ways to, number one, let the body undergo the process of inflammation naturally, so inflammation levels gradually kind of can lower. But also to do that, what you need to do is remove the stressors from your life, as many as possible, and identify all the issues to allow that to happen. And then once that's happened, cortisol levels will lower, and then naturally you'll be getting better night's sleep, and you'll be able to heal your mitochondria, and you'll be finally stimulating your thyroid, which will be releasing all this thyroid stimulating hormone, which will then give you energy. And finally, onto the topic of skin issues. Now, I read somewhere that the skin is like the internal organs turned inside out, so we can actually see what's going on. It's a reflection of the inside of our body, which, to be honest, I completely agree with when you start to understand about inflamed skin issues. It's all about foods not being broken down properly in the system and actually escaping through our digestive tract into the bloodstream, and then these foreign inflammatory proteins causing these inflamed issues in our skin. So what happens is you end up eating food while you're in a stressed state, and when this goes on, your body isn't able to produce stomach acid to actually break down the food you're eating, so it ends up passing into your small intestine half digested, and these half digested food particles escape from the small intestine through the gut lining and into the bloodstream, where they get transported to the outer body in your skin. And that's what ends up causing a lot of these inflamed skin problems. Skin problems can also be a result of poor diversity along your gut lining. If you're somebody in the past who has had taken kind of years worth of antibiotics on and off, you're more than likely going to experience skin issues, because like I said, it is a reflection of the inside of your body turned outside. So the actual life and health of the microorganisms inside you is reflected on your outside. So again, if you experience lots of skin issues, it's more than likely that you have you're lacking microbial diversity in your intestines. And finally, there are certain nutrients out there that are worth consuming if you're looking to have fit and healthy skin that really glows and you don't have many issues and it's really soft to touch. And you want to look towards some of the fat soluble vitamins for this. So this is vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E and vitamin K2. So finally, I'm going to discuss the issue as to why medication leads to a lot of these problems that I've explained in this video. So number one, we look at medications like prednisolone. It's an anti-inflammatory medication, but what it is, like I said before, it's a synthetic version of the hormone cortisol, which is a catabolic hormone, which means it breaks down tissues and cells in the body in order to perform the tasks it does. So when you take prednisolone, everything seems amazing, but when you take it for an extended period of time, you start to notice massive degeneration in, like I said before, your joints and your bones, because it's leaching away at all these cells to actually carry out the tasks that it does. Drugs out there like immune suppressant drugs and anti-inflammatory drugs, they change the whole complexion of the microbiome. All this bacteria living inside of us, actually it works adversely in our favour, and so it creates more of a barren terrain that's lacking life, that's creating these B vitamins to give us energy. So again, that's why a lot of people that end up taking these anti-inflammatory and immune suppressant drugs, they feel devoid of energy because they've wiped a lot of this bacteria that's actually ending up giving us energy over the years. And also, one thing that's really important to note, probably above all else about anti-inflammatory medication, is the fact that it suppresses the process of inflammation, which I've spoken about in a previous video, is a healing process that the body initiates. So if you keep suppressing this, if you keep stopping it kind of from allowing it to take its course, your body is never truly going to heal, and you're going to keep it in this stress state where cortisol levels are always high. And like I said before, these thyroid levels are always low. Your body is always in this breakdown state where it's never got any readily available energy for you to enjoy yourself with. Medication like omeprazole actually reduces the acidity of our stomach. So again, it leads to a lot of these problems with inflamed joints and inflamed skin, as foods we eat aren't being properly digested, aren't being properly broken down by stomach acid. So they're making their way through our digestive system, through this gut lining and into the bloodstream, and causing these issues. And medications like omeprazole that actually weaken stomach acid directly contribute to this. And then finally, painkillers are just one of those ones that they block the receptor sites from our brain to our gut. So any sort of pain we experience, it's actually going on, but our body, it's stopping our brain from experiencing it. So we don't actually tend to take action. We think the easy option is just to take these painkillers, but we don't actually realize the damage that's going on, so we don't end up taking any action. And as a result, things get worse. Cortisol levels are elevated, the body keeps breaking down, and ultimately you're going to need probably some sort of surgery to actually save part of your body because you've damaged it so much over time. So question of the day today, guys, is what symptom do you experience most frequently while living with inflammatory bowel disease? I'm really interested to know your answer. Let me know about it down below in the comment section. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, guys, because I've got some really important Crohn's and colitis educational videos coming out to you every single Monday and Thursday at 5 PM UK time. I really don't want you to miss out on a single video, so make sure you ring that notification bell so that you don't miss out. Finally, you might want to check out YouTube's recommended video for you. It will be the video above me, and to my right hand side will be my suggested video for you based on this video you've just watched. So thank you so much for watching it, guys. I really hope it's helped you out. Take care, and I'll see you again very shortly in the next one.